Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Emergence of Being podcast. We're talking all today about breaking habits. Stick around. Welcome. So today we're talking about breaking habits. It's not just bad habits. We're talking about kind of all habits. So maybe good habits are better than bad habits, but really all habits are done from a place of unconsciousness. So we're looking to how to live a more conscious life through looking at the things that we've established as habits that we're kind of being unconscious about.
I look at emotional habits. What do we consistently focus on, and what is a recurring theme in your head that you continue to do over and over? What is the definition of like addiction, or is it addiction or something else? Like it's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah, they have that as one of the definitions of insanity. And
insanity, that's right.
Yeah, and I just want to put this up. This is like a little. This is like the picture that I found for today's topic, and it's like all these habits that we're seeing. These are oftentimes there because of some sort of unmet emotional need or overcompensating emotional need. A lot of the stuff is being driven from emotions that we don't have tools to deal with, and then we're trying to mitigate them by incorporating some sort of habit or thing in our life to kind of take the edge off. But if you can be consciously aware of the emotional part, then we don't need to be doing unconscious things to avoid our unconscious things. Make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, because you're talking about emotional habits. We have all these things that we're being unconscious about, and then we're kind of like, well, what can I do over here unconsciously so I don't have to look at this unconsciously? But it's really all about getting conscious and making everything as a conscious choice instead of having to have things on, autopilot or like a program running in the background so that we don't look at things.
And it's also all resistance. It kind of comes down to resistance of not wanting to look at something. What's the reason for you eating the burger and the fries and smoking and whatever else it is that you're doing? It's a little bit of addiction / habit.
Oops. I did not mean to put that up. No, we might have gotten a lot of habits from family. I was trying to put up the thing that says what you resist persists, but I clicked the wrong button.
You could put it up.
I had to read. Well, that because also energy flows where your attention goes, and if you're focusing on things that you don't want in your life or that aren't working in your life, you are actually adding more energy to that because all the all the universe sees is that I'm focused on something. And so if you have an emotional habit of I'm worthless, and therefore I don't feel like I deserve money, and I'm focusing on how much money I don't have, you see how all these things start to stack together from like one emotional thing or one need that's not fulfilled or one belief that now builds onto an emotional component of not feeling worthy that then builds on a habit of I'm focusing on the lack of my life instead of being gratitude in my life. And that's how all this really interweaves together.
I'm going to focus on your misspellings in there because I am the spelling Nazi.
Oh no, what was I misspell?
I don't know. I don't even know what you spelled in there. It's like resits and
Oh yeah, now I got the little googly things. It's a little green Grammarly thing is going.
Yeah,
and now resist. Well, I thought the resist was right. I think I got the persist wrong. Is that better?
Yes, now it's spelled correctly.
Yeah. Well, I got over resisting my bad grammar a long time ago. And like Seven says all the time, she's like, honey, you're a great content creator, but you need like 5 people to spell check you. And so like Anya and her both like for my class last time, like we're both looking at it and making sure that it was okay. So I'm content knowing this.
See, I had to because you're like the word Nazi. So when I'm going to ask why, I'm going to like point out because I got a name spelling. So I'm going to take that apart.
Yeah. But like when you do have something, like if you have an opportunity within oneself, like I used to get really defensive and judgmental and self-judgmental. Like I like with my mailing list, like I still have this one dude, like I'll send something out and they'll email me like, hey, I noticed you had like 85 grammar errors or spelling errors in the thing. And I'm exaggerating a little bit. And they're like, I'm a professional proofreader. And for you, I would make for this much money, I will proofread your things. And I'm just like, dude, you don't have to like try to make a business opportunity out of it. Like I'm totally content. I'd rather get my information out and it not being correct and it not being out. But if I have time for a proofreader, like I totally take people up on it, but it's not a reason to not create and, and hold yourself back because you have a self-judgment of an area of weakness or lack or opportunity.
It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's probably an
No.
emotional habit. That's an emotional habit right there. Number one,
Right.
everything has to be perfect. How many of you say that? It has to be perfect.
Yeah.
I'm a perfectionist, so.
And perfectionism is a prison, because if it has to be perfect, you'll never even
Never
start.
get it done. Yep.
You'll never
Yep.
even start, because my start, it's not perfect and it never will be. So it gives me an excuse to never be in the world or actually show up.
Yep, I'm in the process of writing my next course, which is emotional detox, giving tools and techniques and clearing processes to expel all these things in the head so you can be quieter. And I'm like, but this isn't good enough. This content's not going to be enough. I need to have it fancy. And I'm like, no, it can be super simple. Break it down, make it simple, stupid. It's fine. It will be. So this is my perfectionism at its finest, and I have to plow through that because it's going to be awesome. So
but like, and understand too, like when we have these ideas about ourselves, like oftentimes our bad day may be like, that's really, sometimes we are really self-judging of our greatest gifts. Our greatest gifts will never be good enough. And when it comes down to one of your greatest gifts in the world and your unique medicine, like your worst day might be better than somebody else's best day that has that as not their gift, And so like, I'm just saying this as like, really, like your bad day might just still be the medicine needed to change the world or to change somebody around you. But you're so busy like looking to be perfect that you never let your gift fly free. Yeah. And how much more change could have been done in the world already had you been willing to show up, even if you weren't perfect.
Please show up, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Be yourself.
Yeah, hopefully I had all my, like, that all's always smelling good in this one. The breaking habits, the good, the bad. Okay.
Yeah. So really look at where you have a recurrent theme, what has to be organized. Another thing that I see a lot of is, I'm very organized. It has to be a certain control. It has to be, the shoes have to be lined up. All the spoons have to be in a certain direction. It's control over, you have to have control, because if you don't have control, well, what's going to happen then? You're not safe.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, like Bashar, Dr. K and I both have been watching this gentleman named Bashar who channels, his name is Daryl Enkin, actually. I might be having the last name misspelled, but he's channeling a being called Bashar. And Bashar was talking about how the higher self conceives that no actual inspiration ever comes from the physical mind, but we then receive it and then we perceive how it shows up in the world. But what we can never do is figure out how that actually works. So like the control of how that comes to be is completely out of our capacity as a human, because that's part of like the dynamic is for us to have this contextual experience. So you'll never understand the how. And because we head trip and try to figure out or control how it shows up, we limit the universe. It's like the difference between actualization and manifestation. We only can figure out that it shows up. We have no realm of the how. That's the universe's job. But if we try to do the universe's job, it cripples us, because we're one drop of the ocean and we're trying to be the ocean, which we are, but like you can't have that all here.
Exactly. So it comes down to emotional habits. It comes down to the fries, the burger, what's behind that? I always look at what's behind that. What's the reasoning for the burger? What does it make you? What does it provide for you? It just makes you feel calmer, or whatever your answer is. Look at that answer. What does it provide for you? Is it really just the taste? Because inside, I hear this all the time. I know I have to stop this. I know I got to stop doing this. I know I got to do this. But
coming up on my 19-year sobriety, I got sober in 2006. And like what drinking did for me is it let me like not be aware of what I was aware of, even though that was one of my greatest capacities. And I used to be much heavier. And just in the last year, I lost a ton of weight. And someone said something the other day is like, well, what if you were trying to hide in the world? And like by having more body mass, like you were hiding, and people don't want to receive you if you're not like looking a certain way. And like, so if I look a certain way, then it takes me off the hook for being in the world, because people, there was a lot of head tripping involved. A lot of head tripping.
Yeah. And often we don't see that. So when you're in the bottle, you can't see the label. So Hank and I do that kind of thing where we're going to look in and see what's the nook, what's the nugget that needs to shift. And that's a really great point. A lot of people come to me for weight loss. A lot of people hide behind the weight loss. I see that. It's like they cry and I want to lose weight. I want to do what? Why do you want to lose weight? Okay, because I can't play with my kids because I try to run. But we get to the nook of the cranny and we see it's way more than that. A lot of times it's a distrustful relationship that happened. And so if you lose all this weight and you're beautiful now, men are going to be attracted to you, but you don't trust men. So we're going to keep the weight on. So that
came up for me with someone just recently in a conversation, that not wanting to show up in the world as much because, oh my gosh, like how many eyes are on you and how many creepers and how many stalkers and whatever. And then like, you don't even have to worry about making the choice to show up if your body is in a place where you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. So we often want something because the soul kind of wants it too, but however,
no,
see how I'm catching myself? It's great. I like the words yet and however. I really enjoy those actually. However, we don't make the choices because there's the underlying issue needs to be kind of excavated and cleaned out so you can move forth and know, wait, it is okay. I can show myself and I don't have to be around all those creepers. It doesn't mean I have to accept them, and I can actually block all that out. They might not even come near me. So if we clear that out, it's a safe point to move forward and you will lose the weight. But there's so many, I can tell you weight loss, there's almost 85% of the time, there's some, if not more, there's some emotional component that I find that is keeping the weight in place.
Yeah. And for me, that was true too. Like about a year ago is when I started losing the weight. And we talked on our last stream about like on February 11th last year, I would like demand a change to the universe. And some of that was changes in my body. Some of that was changes of how I was showing up in my relationship. And as soon as like I really started to deal with those things, everything started, like I didn't have a reason to not look good for someone or to not show up in the world. And I also started listening to my body, which was huge. Like how many people, is it just a misfiring of not listening to what the body is requiring or desiring?
Yeah. And it's, if you want to break an emotional habit, let me rephrase that. If you want to change, you have to often break an emotional habit, because the reason things are the way they are is because somewhere there's a lot of attention and that's become a habit to do things a certain way. And you're hoping that it's going to create the same, and you're going to try to create a change with using a certain formula. And that's your emotional habit of how you approach things. And it's not working. So,
Ooh, the other thing that just came to me that what a client I was working with recently, they realized that some of the things that were showing up for them wasn't even theirs. They were being somebody else. They were actually receiving like a projection from someone of how they need to be received, how they need to show up in the world. So a lot of what they were choosing wasn't even from a place of who they're choosing to be. They were choosing to be so that mom could receive them or that their partner could receive them. And so like a lot of the choices weren't even for them. And so like that's part of the process too, is like finding out like, well, who am I really? Wow, that's probably a 10-part topic right there. And then and like
parking lot.
And so what isn't mine? Wow, 99% wasn't. And now that I can get rid of all that and deal with the 1% that is, things become a lot easier.
And that's a sticking point a lot of times. It's like you come up on it. It's like, remember when you used to learn, whoever swims, I remember being in swimming lessons and they graduate you up to that big diving board and you get up, you crawl up to the top and you're on the edge and I'm like, oh crap. And you got a kid behind you. You got 4 kids behind you on the ladder waiting. And I'm like, well, you either turn around and you go behind those kids and say, I want to crawl down back down the ladder, or you jump down, And so when you come up on the edge of something and it's like, oh, a lot of us sit there and it's like you said, you draw the arrow and we sit there because it's just like, it's a big shift. And really just let yourself go and jump in the water and know that you will be sustained. You will be protected. You will be supported. You can't not.
And just to give context on last week's stream, if you missed it, like I give this analogy of a bow and arrow and like the desire for change in the world or the want The lack of change in the world is like you pulling a bow and arrow back and just holding it and never actually choosing something that will create differently. That is you lacking something different. And it takes way more energy to stay in the same energy that you are now than it is to give in and surrender to the will of the soul to start choosing who you truly be in this world. And when you start choosing in alignment with the soul, like the life path and the soul path come together, that's when life becomes magical. But when you're like veering off and you're not in jive with the soul, like you have all this friction and weird things showing up in your reality. And it's like actually it's a lot more work to do that than if you came into alignment. But it's just a question of really becoming willing to look at what is it going to take? Who am I really? Who do I choose to be here? Like really being in the question and in the space of choosing different versus how do I stay the same? And like there's a lot of energy that it's harder to stay the same than it is to change.
It absolutely is. It really takes a lot more energy. You'll notice that when you walk through, when you decide to go to the other side and make that change that you need to make.
Yeah. And finding out it takes a lot more energy to stay here on the earth than just to be up there in the clouds. It really does.
It does. I'm trying to think of easy tips to change emotional habits or any kind of habit. And that's
ask the question, what is this really about? Like this is like, well, being in question is like a really, other than why, like why is the one question you don't ask because it creates a looping energy that you experience why again. And we've been doing that as a species for a couple centuries. It's not working well. Let's start choosing different questions. But like, what is this really about? Whatever comes to you first, then start asking, where did I feel like this before? Because you're identifying the theme of energy. And now you're identifying all the different places where that theme has played out, where you can actually take a good hard look at it. And please write it down. Like journaling is such a good exercise. I resisted it for years. And then I finally did it and it changed my life. Like just actually starting to do a process of getting it out. I've never had so much change. I keep thinking I've had a lot of change. And then like, it just keeps coming to a whole new level of what shows up in my life.
Yeah.
But journaling is huge.
It is. It helps on so many levels. When you get things out of the head and on paper, there's something that just happens. And even if it's affirmations, getting them out of the head and on paper. One exercise I have my clients do is a lot of them have to have some sort of challenging conversation with somebody in order to heal. Mm-hmm. Because sure, you can send the intention. And if, a loved one has passed away, that's probably a lot of what you need to do is just send intentions and write, but you still write. But sometimes it's so difficult it's like, there's so much anxiety to have that conversation. I say, okay, let's just energetically get some of that layer off and write a letter to the person first, read it, then rewrite it, because the first letter might not be so pretty. And that's not what we want to project to that person. Right. So write a letter, read it to yourself, or I sometimes read it because I have an unbiased opinion. And then let's rewrite it with a softer approach and then speak to the person. You've pulled off some of that energy. You've pulled off some of that energetic yuck, and it makes the conversation easier. It really does.
If you really want to just take this from like the broadest possible standpoint, this is in my As I Forgive Me workshop, which is a whole process of channel integration. The one question you really need to ask, or you could choose to ask if you'd like to, is when have I judged myself or judged another? And from that question, you write down everything you can think of. And it's going to be a long list, a really long list. And then from each one of those, you ask, who was affected by this? And now you have the list of all the stuff where things need to be worked on, chords and energy dynamics and all that. And having I have a worksheet that I have for this for each person, but it's really like just being in the space of being willing to address it. And whether they're alive or dead, or if sometimes people aren't willing to have a conversation, and it's not our job to make someone willing to have it. But if you're in a true space of you're willing to have the change and you're willing to have the conversation, if the situation presents itself and it's kind to all parties, that is the life-changing work, because you're taking all that heavy sludge and just giving it the chance to become high octane fuel to rocket you.
Yeah. And just getting it out is a lot.
Half the battle. Yeah, because it's all in there, and you just writing it is like, that's why in AA they have the fifth step where you share with God, yourself, and another human being the exact nature of your wrongs. What it is really taking all that space that's being held in, where it's just you head tripping, and it takes the strength of the mortar out of the equation when you allow another person to know it. Or even if you're just writing it into the letter, that's better. But ideally, you want to share it with someone that you trust. Find a priest, find someone, because once you have another aspect of consciousness know it, really the hold that it has in place of holding that brick wall between you and your higher self in place, it just loosens the border. You can start taking down the bricks and dealing with them individually instead of trying to like fight a whole wall.
The other thing that comes up, it's secrets. This is
Ooh.
not so tied into emotional habits, but maybe it is holding on to secrets, things you don't want people to know.
Well, the things that are secret about are the things we're most ashamed of judging ourselves about. And we form all kinds of habits to protect ourselves to not look at that. Like drinking. Like how many years did I have a drinking habit? And then I substituted that with a different habit. And then I substituted that until I was finally ready to look at it and say, whoa, I'm pretty effed up, but I love myself anyway. And then that's the tipping point where all of a sudden what was such a secret isn't such a big deal because you're an allowance of yourself.
And it's simple things like I didn't pass a test, or I stole somebody's cake, and that you've been carrying that. And now that's creating a secretive emotional habit of keeping things congested within you. And it's so just, you just release when you just tell somebody about it.
You know, the biggest habit we all need to really look at, or we have the invitation to look at, is the habit of judging ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Because all judgment truly is self-judgment. You cannot possibly judge what somebody else has done unless you yourself have done it, because you would have no contextual reference point to make the judgment. So like really take a look inward. Like every judgment you've ever had about anyone else, you could only have that judgment if you had a point of view and have done that in some aspect yourself. Even like murder, man, like how many people killed a spider? You've ended life. We're all guilty, right? So like truly, like anything you can judge somebody else for, take a look within and like, where have I judged myself, or where am I in judgment of myself, or not an allowance of myself for a similar theme of energy? And that is the greatest habit of all. And we were taught that by our parents and society, because we were taught to make everything else outside of us more important than our own knowing about ourselves.
Yep.
That's why corporate America is so strong. How can I get the most out of this person and put the least into it? By training them to judge themselves so harshly and care more about how I think of them than they think of them. Oh my gosh, this might need to be a two-parter. No, but truly, like that's the crux of it all. Wow, we couldn't have planned to like talk about it in any better way.
Being hard on oneself is so it's parentally perpetuated, it's societally perpetuated. Meeting expectations, we're on a whole different topic, but it does not
it's so interrelated, really. It's really interrelated. It's
people to be ourselves, and it creates emotional habits. An emotional habit of I have to work hard. I have to, like, that's a habit of just, this is where I go. I'm not deserving this, so this is where I go. I habitually put myself in these situations almost unconsciously. I go to this, I work, I have to keep working, can't take a break, can't take a vacation, can't take care of myself.
Well,
it's habits.
And that's done on purpose in some respects, because if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and like how many people are stuck really on those lower parts of this pyramid, that like, we're trained to create only exactly what we need to barely get by.
Yeah.
And you will expand and contract appropriately. You get that big tax refund, before you know it, you're still in the same spot. You got the raise you've been looking for at work, you got a cheaper place, you're still creating whatever's showing up to barely be skimping by potentially. Not everybody, but this is the conditioning of the collective, and it's done on purpose with like living paycheck to paycheck. There's a huge morphic field of only creating the bare necessity to survive and not really looking at what is required to thrive, which would be to get out of self-judgment, to be self first, to tell the man to say, hey, I'm going to honor myself and I'm not going to work the overtime. And because of that energetic shift, your life starts to unfold differently. But we're really stuck in this place of unconsciousness on purpose. Because people are easier to control when they're not conscious.
So we habitually ride the same truck all the time, because number one, you have to gain awareness. So that's why we have these conversations, because if we didn't talk about this, how would you even think about hey, maybe I do that. Then you would never, the light bulb would never even go off. You just continue doing the same thing every day. and
Mhm.
somewhere in the back wanting things to be different and better, yet you don't see it. You don't see your way out of it because unconsciously the program's running. There's a really
Yep.
great book too, though, that I'm reading now. It's called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. Have you heard of that one, Mike?
I have not, but it sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's all about how things are actually passed down from our parents, our mothers, and sometimes we create these things and we have to kind of
Yep.
unheave them and
Well,
and
yeah.
excavate them because we don't have an explanation for the reasons why we're acting a certain way. So
Mm.
it's deep, deep work, but if you're willing to do it, you're going to gain, you're going to gain, and you're going to get out of your situation. So
And I invite everybody watching this today, like, be the invitation and the honoring of you to even entertain looking at this stuff. And they say in astrology, and keep in mind, astrology is the autopilot of the universe. The more aware you are, the less it matters. But traditionally speaking, the first 28 years of your life is you being programmed. That's your first Saturn return. The next 28 years is you going, whoa, that's not me. Who am I really? And it's unprogramming you. And then the next 28, when you get to 56, is you actually being you. And you can fast track all of this. You don't have to wait till 56 to start really being you. But like, this is the autopilot of the universe where you get programmed, you unprogram, and then you go, oh, okay, here I am. And then, yeah. So like, what would it take for you to live a conscious life now and fast track all that autopiloting?
yeah, and if you have a habit, we have to create a new habit. And
Or
so
conscious
this
choice, yeah.
the different conscious choice. So sometimes it's tricky because not only do we have to break an old habit, we have to create a new habit. And that can take a little bit of work, but stick with it. You got to
Yeah.
stick with it and you will create a new habit. You
And
absolutely will. So it can be done.
yeah, and with the new habit, like, the idea is that you're choosing this new repeated pattern. Because I have an
Yep.
issue with the word habit. That's why I'm reframing this for
Okay.
myself.
New
That
pattern.
you are consciously choosing it always. Because like you could be going to the gym every day, and that could be a very good habit. But if while you're doing all that, it's unconscious, then it may not necessarily be better than the old. So like, it's all about conscious choice, conscious patterning, and we can call it habit. But you get
Mhm.
where I'm going with that. Like, don't
Yes.
substitute one element of unconsciousness for another, even if the new one is more beneficial to the body or something like that. It's really about everything you do is in conscious choice. That's
So
the best habit. Choose
choose
conscious.
differently. Choose differently. And nobody can do that for you. Nobody can do that for you. We can all hold your hand and bring you to the water. However, ultimately it comes down to, okay, I'm doing this. I am going to create a new choice. I'm going to create a new pattern starting today. And every single day, come hell or high water, I'm doing this thing to help me make a new choice. That's kind of
Yeah.
how I approach stuff. It's like, okay, I gotta do things differently to
And
create a new path.
And what if choosing all these things, you were doing choices to express who you're choosing to be in the world instead of choosing something in order to have something in order to be something? And I bring this up because it's an important distinction. Beingness comes first. But if you need to do the thing they call have a job in order to have money, in order to be secure, you'll never be that because you're always looking to something external to you to create that beingness. But if you can be the thing they call enlightened and loving and secure and empowered and all these things, you can then make choices as an expression of the beingness. And it's a whole different thing because you're already coming from this internal motivation place versus I need this outside of me in order to do something different within me.
Yeah, so we're kind of about 30 minutes at this point. So we give
Yep.
some people some tips on if you got a habit, if you have a thing, let's call it a thing that deep inside probably needs to take a different shift, gain awareness around it, ask what is this all about
Big
and
K.
what can I do differently? And then if you need how can I create something different to shift me out of this, then reach out to one of us and let's create something for you. Let's
Mhm.
create a routine to help you make a different choice. Ultimately, the work will
Ooh,
be up to you because I can give people a diet plan, but you got to follow it.
thank you. The word routine feels so much lighter to me than the word habit. I love that. Like, you're breaking habits, you're establishing routines and giving yourself the flexibility to choose differently based on what you're aware of. I love
Yeah.
that. Ooh,
New routine, creating a new
yeah.
routine, and the old thing will fall away. You have the ability to pull it back at any point in time, but
Mhm.
let's just create a new routine, really. And and create something different where you need to change. And it just needs to be done every day. And believe me, it will start to work. It happens on so many levels, and it's really not that tough. It really isn't.
No, it can come with ease. All you have to do is show up in the moment and start to choose and respond instead of react. And it becomes way easier because like 90% of our day might be unconscious. If all of a sudden only 60% of your day is unconscious, that extra 30%, it's a lot easier because you're actually showing up to make a choice instead of looking at the end of the day and realizing, I don't even know what I did today. That's what we're breaking the habit of unconsciousness is what it comes down to. But thank you all for tuning in. Oh my gosh, we could totally do a part 2 if we want.
We can chat more on it.
No,
Emotional habits part 2.
Yeah. So we might be back with emotional habits part 2, or we might be back with a different topic. But either way, thank you so much for being part of this. And if you do need help with anything, Dr. K and I work both one-on-one. We both have programs. We are really, like, both of us are really passionate about helping people kind of step into their power, their potency, their uniqueness, and show up differently in the world. So
Absolutely.
allow us to contribute to you if it feels like. But we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.